Hello and welcome. Abby, this video is entirely for you. You reached out to me last week and said, would love to hear your take as well. And you were referring to an interview that was conducted by Bloomberg, one of their programs, Leaders with La Croix. And they were talking to the Chanel CEO, Leena Nair. And I'm currently working on a price increases study, trying to explore, is there a point at which brands raise their prices too much, consumers stop buying? So you thought it would be really relevant to watch this particular interview. Thank you, Abby. I watched it a couple of times back to back. The first time I was very relaxed. I didn't think anything. I just listened to the interview. The second time round is when I really concentrated and tried to read between the lines with regards to the questions that were asked, her responses, why they asked certain questions. And at the end of it all, I couldn't help but feel a sense of the interview was incredibly scripted. The first time round when I watched it, I thought to myself, my goodness, she's been at Unilever for 30 years and she's totally changed direction to luxury. And we need to give leaders grace because it's not easy. She's going through an incredibly steep learning curve. The second time round, I realized, oh, she's been there for 2.5 years. So she's starting to get a better appreciation of the dynamics at play at Chanel. But what was really tough was the fact that I went back a couple of days after first watching it to go through the comments section and just see, are there any interesting comments that have been made, discussions, for example. And Bloomberg had turned off the comments section because the comments, when I read them the first time around, were absolutely scathing. And I just thought, we need to give people grace. We are incredibly critical, mean viewers. We're very judgmental, we're hard. Just give a little grace. But I definitely felt it was incredibly scripted. The program researchers would have sent through a series of questions to Chanel, to Leena, and should have had a chance to really look through and script her questions. And you could see that. And at times her responses were eye-rolling. The use of some of the words that she kept using, kept referring to, handmade, savoir-faire, magical, the craftsmanship, the quality, which I found interesting because quality can be low, it can be high, and she never quite qualified it, and it was just an assumption that Chanel's quality is high. Overall, I thought she threw crumbs. We didn't really learn anything. She didn't say anything of any real value or gravitas. The interview didn't move the needle at all, especially for me. And I feel if I had researched the brand, if I was a hardcore Chanel fan and I researched the brand, and there are a lot of channels on YouTube with hardcore Chanel fans who would have said a lot more, would have known a lot more detail than she would have, and shared that with the viewers. And I just thought to myself, what's the point? This is strategic. She is the mouthpiece for the owners of the brand. It's a privately held company, so they never comment on anything. So this is their chance to start talking, setting the record straight, having a senior person. So you really add gravitas to what's being said. And I thought, what a shame. But an incredibly scripted interview. It didn't move the needle at all. It was strategic. And it was about, I guess, saying this is who we are, this is what we're about. And if anything, I hope they use this interview as a stepping stone to later have fuller, better, more meaningful conversations and address some of the issues that were brought up in the comments section. What's happening on social media where people are talking about the real low quality issues we're seeing when it comes to their leather goods. There are about maybe 4 or 5 things that stood out from this interview that I'll be addressing directly in this video. I'm Anesu Sagonda, and I produce educational luxury content for anyone after the finer things, whether you're new to money and wanting to learn how to navigate the terrain, or you're young and starting out in life and wanting to reap the benefits of buying better quality from the get-go, or you're into luxury but you want to focus more on high quality under the radar brands, then my content is geared towards you.
As far as I can remember, Chanel was this, beautiful high-end luxury. Everybody wanted the products, but it was always quite secretive. And then there's been an opening in the last couple of years through culture events, podcasts. Why is that? Like, can a high-end luxury company no longer be secretive in 2024?
I think one of the key takeaways from the pandemic 2 years ago, it showed brands where their weaknesses were, because the world literally shut down. And if you weren't active online with e-commerce, for example, or you had built up a following, it was very difficult to ride the tide during the pandemic. And that is something that would have been heightened and highlighted to a brand like Chanel. So they're merely reacting to that, and they've adjusted accordingly.
And it comes from a sense of we don't say things unless we've really done them. So high integrity. So we'd rather do things before we speak about them. So some of the shyness has been to do with that.
I don't necessarily buy into this shyness. They need to do something first before they announce it. Chanel is a privately held company. It's owned by the Wertheimer family. It's headquartered in London. The only thing they have to do is report to Companies House, report their accounts to Companies House. But other than that, they are not legally obligated at all to say anything. And that has been their stance, that the Wertheimers have just focused on building a behemoth of a luxury brand without having to say anything or do anything, because it's a privately held brand. But what has happened, the market is changing, the dynamics, the consumer, what happened a couple of years ago with the pandemic has given them a much needed jolt and made them realize they need to talk, they need to address their audience. And more so, they're realizing that by 2030, 35% of their consumers will be Gen Zs and Alphas. And they are consumers who are active online, they are digital natives, they've grown up with the digital space. So they want things online, they buy based on content creation, on influencers. So they need to adjust accordingly, because that's a big segment of their consumers. And if they don't adjust and speak to them in a way and a manner that they understand, those are sales they're going to lose out on.
I think there's no typical client and there's no one reason to engage in luxury. Truly, we see all kinds of clients, people who are long-time fans of Chanel, people who are dedicated buyers of couture, people who are first-time buyers. In fact, first-time buyers are 30% of our clients, which is a lot. We see a lot of Gen Z and Alpha. 35% of luxury consumers by 2030 are going to be Gen Z and Alpha. It's a hard number to believe, but it's the vibrancy, the vitality is huge, because each of those clients has a different set of reasons for why they engage with us. So for Gen Z and Alpha, they buy because they want to buy less and buy better. They want to buy because they see it's a financially wise investment.
I found it really interesting that you consistently referred to Generation Z and Alpha. I get it, because they are your consumers of the future. As you mentioned, by 2030, 35% of your consumers will be Generation Z and Alpha. And in the same breath, you also said their focus is very much on buy less, therefore you buy better. What I refer to on my channel as buy better, buy less. Quality is king to all of us, not just the younger generations. I look at myself, Generation X, I look at my reference, my peers, baby boomers, slightly younger generation, millennials. Quality is king to all of us. And that's something that, yes, granted, people from different generations, different backgrounds buy for different reasons, but quality is arguably the most important. Yes, perception, expectations, experience of quality will vary, and what you expect and want as quality, that'll be very different, I know. But quality is something that's important to everyone, and something that I really would like to stress, that it shouldn't be overlooked. You spoke consistently of couture, the bulk of the product in the video, but you also mentioned fragrances, skincare, beauty are also doing well. I don't know whether you left out accessories and leather goods because of the issues that you're having that are well documented on social media, but quality is king, and therefore that's an area, leather goods, accessories, would really like to see a bump up in the quality.
So do you have to speak differently, Leena, to the younger generation?
No, not really.
I was a little taken aback by this response, because I thought, how do I respectfully respond to this? The younger generation communicates very differently to the older generation, and how you talk to them is also going to be very different. I'm a Gen Xer, as I've mentioned. I like bricks and mortar. I like physical stores. I like going into a shop, speaking to someone, touching the product, feeling, having a play with it, and so forth. I like traditional marketing, traditional advertising over digital ways of communicating. I really focus on high quality, on craftsmanship. That's important to me, the heritage of the brand. I'm into experiences that are enriching, that are unique, that are of very high quality, that are enjoyable. That's what I really consider when it comes to luxury. Whereas younger consumers, when I talk to clients' children, I talk to friends, I just talk to younger generation, they value very different things. Generation Z and Alpha that you consistently talk about, they are digital natives. They've grown up within the digital world. That's all that they know. So they are a lot more receptive, a lot more responsive to digital apps, digital platforms. What they don't consider the prestige, the heritage and so forth of a brand. They want authenticity. They want inclusion, something you're really focused on, and I'll talk about in a bit. They like transparency. They like sustainability, all the key buzzwords. And they listen to content creators, influencers. They are a lot more influenced by social media when it comes to their purchases, something that I don't consider at all. So I definitely beg to disagree, and I think it would be an absolute shame, and I'm almost confident it's not happening. I think it's just an oversight on your part, but communication needs to be different to the younger generation, so they're a lot more receptive and responsive to a message that's consistent to them and given in a way that they will understand. The message can be the same across the board for all of us, what you refer to as using exceptional quality materials, the savoir-faire, handmade, the craftsmanship, high quality. Saying all of that to all the age groups is important, but how you say it needs to be tailored to the respective age group, and it needs to be different and communicated in a way one will be most responsive to.
The high-end luxury, does that even go higher-end luxury? That actually, there's a lot of players in the fashion world right now, in luxury world,
yes.
And it's really the ones that are very high that will do well. And does that also justify some of the price increases that we've seen at Chanel?
You know, our prices are related to our cost prices. We use exquisite raw materials, and our production, as you know, is very rigorous, laborious, handmade. So we raise our prices according to the inflation that we see. So they're really linked to the cost price.
I don't think I will ever come across a brand in my lifetime that'll be honest, audacious enough to put up their hand and say, yes, we have been incredibly smart and we have built a brand with incredibly high, very positive brand equity, and we're merely reaping the benefits of our hard work. That's just never going to happen. But it's something that consumers really need to be mindful of. When it comes to a brand like Chanel, for example, the product Leena is most talking about is couture. Their couture is phenomenal. The few pieces I have seen have been absolutely exceptional, exquisitely made. What I'm a little more familiar with is their leather goods, their bags. If I was to hazard a guess and say, how much does it cost to produce a bag? Firstly, you have to consider they own the tannery, Haas. So they're getting the leather at a very small price. Hardware, I would imagine they would be very similar to the big groups, LVMH, Kering, for example, Hermes, who own one or two of the brands, for example, that produce the hardware. So they're getting the hardware at a fraction of a price. The thread itself, they most probably work with a company that weaves the thread because of their couture. They may possibly even own the factory, which is what I would expect. So their cost prices are going to be incredibly low. To produce, for example, the classic flap, I don't think it would cost more than $100, for example, but they're selling it for over $10,000 US. Chanel are merely reaping the benefits of their hard work. They have built a brand with incredibly high, very positive brand equity, and they deserve it. If I worked for Chanel, I'd be very happy with what Chanel has achieved. But Chanel will never say to you, we have built an amazing brand. Instead, they will insult. I find it incredibly insulting to one's intelligence that Leena can say it's cost, price, and inflation, why we're putting the prices up. We're using exquisite fabrics, the craftsmanship is laborious and so forth. Even still, it would cost an absolute fraction to produce the bags. They are merely reaping the benefits of building a brand that is incredibly highly valued, and therefore they can keep pushing the premiums. But as consumers, we need to vote with our money. We need to be more discerning, more demanding. They're couture, I would pay for it. But when it comes to the leather goods, for example, we need to push back. We need to see a change, an adjustment in the quality. The premium is not warranted. And the more people keep buying these products, the more we will see Chanel produce bags, for example, that are substandard, but the price keeps going up. We just need to say, no, we need to stop.
China is a very essential market for the luxury ecosystem because of the fast adoption of luxury, because of the appreciation of refinement and sophistication. So it's a very important and essential market for us. I came back recently from China and I was really happy to see the energy and vibrancy.
I have to agree with Leena when it comes to China. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Hong Kong and Singapore. Hong Kong is part of China, and Singapore has a huge Chinese population. And when it came to luxury, I wanted to get a good idea of what luxury looks like in those two markets, because I have a good number of viewers from those markets. And I thought, for me to be able to better understand and serve my Chinese consumers, I need to understand their market firsthand. And like Leena said, the energy and vibrancy was absolutely outstanding. And particularly in Singapore, I was absolutely blown, and more so Chanel. I remember seeing on Orchard Street big Chanel stores, the sizes, the stock, the energy, the staff. It was just absolutely overwhelming. And I thought, good on Chanel. They certainly have invested in the space, in a market that is hungry for their products, that can afford their products, that wants their products, and you could really see it. And I can only give Chanel credit and say it's a brand that's done incredibly well, but we just need a bit of consistency when it comes to all of the products. That high quality has to be totally across the board. After listening to the two sections about philanthropy and also women, Leena spoke at length about herself. She's the first woman CEO of a luxury group, a woman of color, for example. The creative director is female. And then the philanthropy. They've contributed 125 million towards endeavors that are focused around women and also children, particularly girls. And then I thought, why that specifically? It's real girl power at its best. I mean, they've gone the whole 9 yards. But then I thought, hang on a second. Their key consumer in 2030 will be Gen Z and Alpha. And to those two groups, inclusion is really important. So the female ticks a box, a female of color ticks an even bigger box. And then I thought, oh my goodness, if Leena had been a lesbian, that would have literally been the jackpot for Chanel. But that's not a slight on her marriage at all. It was just thinking strategically that brands do things for a reason. Things don't just happen in isolation. And then the philanthropy is also focused on women. So I thought their biggest audience in the future will be Gen Z and Alpha, that are really focused on inclusivity. That is really important to them. And therefore, Chanel being focused on initiatives aligned with inclusion, having management, 60% of the management is made up of women. You also have a CEO who's female, creative director who's female. They are really speaking to their key core audience in the future. And it's not a slight on Chanel at all. It was just more an observation that I thought, this is really interesting. And I wonder if anybody else arrived at the same conclusion. If you did, do let me know in the comments down below. As the interview drew to a close, I thought surely Francine is going to steer the conversation towards addressing some of the well-detailed issues, quality issues Chanel has. And instead she asked this question.
What have you learned about yourself as chief executive? So you were in charge of HR for Unilever, and this is a massive company. It's hundreds of thousands of employees. I mean, is it different actually being in charge of a company than being in charge of HR?
And to say I was disappointed is an incredibly polite understatement. And it just confirmed the interview was nothing more than a scripted, strategic PR stunt. Chanel was merely just saying, we would like to engage, we're a private business, we know we need to start communicating, we need to be a little more open. And they painted themselves in the most glowing light. There isn't a single brand in this world that is absolutely perfect. Brands have good points and bad points. And some of the bad points we're well aware. But we would like to know, what is Chanel doing to address some of these bad points? And although it was a scripted, strategic PR stunt, Francine is a seasoned presenter. She's a seasoned interviewer. And she knows not to ask closed questions. And the way it ended, I just thought, this is just Chanel getting out what they would like to get out. She could have at least added on a bit more instead of a closed question and said, possibly, what from your background has prepared you for your move to Chanel? Or she could have turned around and said, what skills have you gained from the 30 years at Unilever that are transferable to Chanel, for example? Or she could have moved just a little away, still keeping it light and glowing, and said, as someone coming into Chanel with fresh eyes, you've been around for a little while, what is Chanel lacking? Or she could have asked a question which would have been a perfect segue into addressing some of the quality issues, possibly in a second interview. And she could have said, when you look at Chanel's portfolio, where are the strengths, where are the weaknesses? And what would you do to fix the weaknesses? That would have been the perfect question. But instead, she ended on a question asking, is there a difference between running HR and the CEO of a luxury company? I mean, it really can't get any poorer than that. What a disappointing way to end the interview. But what I found really interesting, in my party words, Leena referred to one of Chanel's values as audacity, being audacious. And I thought to myself, I hope Chanel isn't too audacious and arrogant, and they think their incredibly high equity will carry them forever. I hope in time they will humble themselves and address some of the quality issues that they're currently facing with regards to their leather goods. Money is an incredibly emotive subject, and you can't take people's money and provide inferior products. So let's wait and see what the future holds with regards to Chanel, but they can't keep ignoring the issues that they have at the moment. Abby, do let me know what you think. Is there something that you think I should have looked at, I should have addressed, I should have considered? As always, let me know in the comments section.